Yeah.
What's up, Rachel?
Yeah, this is
Hey, hey.
Lancaster, and I'm Danny Martin, my host Josh Gerber here, and we have our awesome guest today, Rachel Snyder. Hello.
Hello, hello.
Welcome, welcome.
Yeah, welcome.
To
So
be
I've
here.
been looking forward to this a long time, and yeah, So tell us a little bit about yourself. Well, you have the Moms for Liberty hat. I guess that's what you're known for. So why don't you just jump in and tell us what is Moms for Liberty for those who don't know?
Sure, I'm happy to. So obviously we're moms, but what people don't understand is that we're also dads, grandparents. I even have some great grandparents that are associate members, aunts, uncles, friends, citizens. So basically you don't have to be a mom to join. But certainly that's how we started and we've grown out from there, but we're definitely, very open to anyone joining. And there's just a lot of care and concern for what's happening in public schools and kind of the decline in America and the shift towards, neo-Marxism that's coming in through the public schools. So certainly moms were at the front lines of that, but certainly many others are wanting to get involved and help us out because they care about the cause. So that's really important. But basically, we're individuals, family, citizens that we really care about America and America's survival. We're dedicated to seeing America from its inception, from its founding, to America's survival. And so we do that by unifying, educating, and empowering parents and also citizens to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. So you see us mostly in the school boards, but certainly we're interested in all levels of government. But the school board is really where your local citizen has the opportunity to be most active and to use their voice and to interact with government at its most local form, and that is your school boards. So that's kind of who we are, and what we care about most is liberty, obviously, the founding fathers, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, all of these things we are genuinely committed to, and we have seen kind of the slide away from that in America through this kind of neo-Marxist movement that's come in. And I do want to share on that, every major dictator that we've had, Mao, Stalin, Hitler, they all came for the children first, and they all came in through the schools to do that. So we have to be aware that that threat is very real. We have to learn from history, and we have to protect America and make sure that that doesn't happen here. That last election, we had, a great win, and everyone's really happy that, someone, like Kamala, whose father was a Marxist economist, is not running the country. But it shouldn't have been that. It shouldn't have been a contest. It shouldn't even have been an option. There's far too many people in America that have gone through a lot of indoctrination, and a lot of that came in through the colleges, and then those folks who went to college are now teachers in our public schools, and they're sharing that same kind of indoctrination with our kids. And I don't want to go too far into this for you, but some of the key differences is who do the children belong to? Whose umbrella do they fall under? They primarily belong to the state, or do they primarily belong to the parents? Moms for Liberty believes, as does America at its founding, the Supreme Court, through a number of rulings, that parental rights are fundamental. So the children and their rights fall under the parents' umbrella. We actually recently had another ruling here in the state of Pennsylvania to support that in Pennsylvania too, which is neat. But sorry, I can just kind of dive right in, but let me just tell you a little bit more about just your local chapter and what we do.
Yeah.
So I always tell folks we have kind of 5 main tasks that we do as a chapter. We educate, we speak, we engage, we endorse, and we host. So obviously this is a speaking engagement and offering a little bit of education to the public today about who we are and some of the things that we have going on, and maybe a little bit on what's going on in your public schools. So we do endorse. We only endorse at the school board level. We're not endorsing in any races above that as of now, But we, not only endorse, but we really have a lot of resources to connect potential candidates to. So that'll be a lot of fun next year when we're back in an election year for that. And we host various events and all member meetings and things of that sort. And of course, engage means engage with your local officials, engage with your school board members, engage with your politicians. And we're doing that from a standpoint of defending parental rights and holding that line for liberty in public schools.
Cool.
So, yeah.
I had a question about the origin of Moms for Liberty. Did this start because of COVID-19 and because of cyber-schooling, or was this pre-COVID-19?
So your local chapter here started around September of 2021, and the very first chapter was founded in Florida in January of 2021. So
Okay.
I would say certainly COVID played a key role in that. The two original founders were actually school board members at various points in time, and so they had kind of seen what that was like to be on a board and to see what it's like to have the community come and interact with them. So they understood the power and importance of that and the significance of the parent or the citizen talking at a meeting. And they also saw, as they used to call it, behind the edgy curtain, kind of behind the iron curtain there, the edgy curtain. And they saw that there was a lot of ways that it was really easy to disempower parents or suppress parents, or so they formed our organization wanting to really empower parents. And so that's a lot of what we do is, I will, read speeches, help people edit their speeches, encourage people to speak. We just had a training not too long ago called School Board Meetings 101, Attend and Speak. So we're definitely looking to empower just your everyday citizen, that they can find their voice and that they can be active in their government. And that's really what our founding fathers designed and wanted, was an active citizenry. A passive citizenry that just listens to the elites, and the elites are in charge and tell them what to do. That's more of a Marxist system. So, we really want to empower the quote unquote little guy to be able to stand up for their rights, and I always say it's kind of like a muscle, use it or lose it. Like if you, you only have your
Absolutely.
rights when
Yeah.
you stand on them, and that's how we make sure we keep them. So we have to
Absolutely.
stay active in that.
Yeah.
Um,
And you brought up a point about how it's good that Trump won, and that Kamala, it shouldn't even have been close.
yeah.
A lot of people are exuberantly excited that Trump won, and that we took the Senate, they took the House, we have all three, and even the popular vote. But not many people here in Pennsylvania seem to notice that the state house didn't change. The
Mm,
Senate is still the same. So, and then on down, we still have a lot to fight here
yeah.
locally.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's being a bit overlooked. And I think it's great that your
Yes.
organization is focused on local
Yes.
things, and the citizenry really should look local first and
Yes.
not look to the
100%.
federal government to do so much.
I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah.
And so really, local is where your power is
Mhm.
as a person. That's where your sphere of influence is. That's where your power is. We're blessed to live in a country where the way it's constructed, there's actually, like, we're given 3 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever you're given in your district, for a reason, because we're designed to be self-governed. We as a people hadn't been using it until COVID. That was something that really, kind of broke my heart when I was looking at rows of seats and realizing these boards are disregarding citizens' rights and citizens' voices, because for decades those seats sat empty.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of on us,
Right.
and I think COVID was that wake up call, that we began to see that things were amiss, began to see that there was some disrespecting of parental rights, began to see there was content coming into the schools that, really wasn't okay. And to your point of Trump and Kamala and president, national versus local, On any of those levels, just to add a little bit more on the who we are and what we do. So we're actually nonpartisan, which a lot of
Mhm.
people just mentally struggle with, because George Washington was actually against the two-party system. He was actually against any
Mhm.
factions at all.
Yes, he was.
He did not want this awful two-party system that we have. I personally think that it actually suppresses the cream from rising to the top. And that,
Yes. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
we would
Yeah.
do much better with an open field and may the best candidate win. So we're actually nonpartisan. And so but the reason I'm, super happy about the Trump win, of course, is the parental rights. He, certainly was more than willing to sign our parent pledge. So you can check that out on the national website and you can also check any of your officials, even at the more local level, like, do you support parental rights and have you demonstrated that? Are you willing to demonstrate that? And parents can sign that as well if they want to stand with us. So that's just like an easy way to get involved or to kind of check on your local officials and see where they stand. So for us, it's not really so much like, oh, well, Trump was Republican and he won and Kamala's a Democrat. It's more about which candidate is willing to stand with us and stand with parental rights.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that case, it was definitely Trump.
I want to build on everything you just said, because for me personally, I didn't used to pay a whole lot of attention to local politics until COVID. And that was a huge wake up call, just like you said. I mean,
Yeah.
how much the school policy, like I had a real problem with lockdowns and, my kid not being able to go in person. And then if he did, he was going to have to wear a mask all day, both my
Yes.
kids. So
A lot of
I'm,
that ties into the Department of Ed, which is the federalization of education. And you can go to the national website under events under Summit and see the video of Trump's speech in 23 in Philadelphia. And, him as well as Vivek was there and DeSantis and RFK said he would come and then changed at the end.
Did you say anything bad on RFK? How dare you? How dare you?
RFK, why did you not come? We want to do that. So they the ones that were there, Trump, a particular, they talked
too, right?
Vivek, yeah,
Mhm.
promising to dismantle the Department of Ed.
Absolutely.
And so that's really important because
Shut it down, baby.
Shut it down. We're done. So just briefly on that. So that was formed in, a lot of people are like, oh, you can't do that. That's horrible. You're destroying the Constitution. You're destroying the country. You just want to dismantle everything, all the hysteria. That's not true. We haven't always had a Department of Ed. That was formed actually in fairly recent history.
Jimmy Carter.
1979. Yeah, Carter. Yeah, 79. So when that change went through, a lot of the opposition to it was basically that this is going to bring in more, empower the factions and disempower the little guy, the parent and the citizen. And that's exactly what happened. And then also as, more the globalist influence came in and it became all about appeasing the unions and empowering the unions, guess what has declined ever since the inception of the Department of Ed? Our test scores, our academic turnout.
Right.
So ever since its inception, things have gone downhill.
Well, they've also used it as leverage to tell local schools what they can and can't do.
Yes. And I wanted to mention that that's what made me think about it when you said about COVID was exactly what people feared happened is what happened, which is what always happens when you have a large localized federal government and a disempowered smaller government. So everyone in charge would say, I have to do this, like a nice lockstep, like a nice Marxist. They would say, I have to do this because the powers above me are making me do it. They were not empowered. They didn't stand on their individual rights. They didn't look at like their own autonomy and like, this is the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do and use their own good conscience. And so that's what parents were up against time and time and time again was I have to do this because the Fed says I have to. And certainly we have to listen to the people above us, which is not really the model of government for self-governance, where we're all, moral and responsible and accountable for our actions. The elite model, the Marxist model, really people are negating their own personal responsibility, and that is never a good thing. So as the Department of Ed is dismantled, you're going to see the power returned to the states and the local county governments and to the local school boards and to the parents. And you're going to see
Absolutely.
them empowered and rise again. So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I have a question about the state being in charge of their education systems more. With the Board of Education being dismantled and destroyed, do you think most states will embrace school choice? Is the Department of Ed the only reason why school choice isn't happening?
So that's a great question. I'm not an expert on the details and the weeds on this, but I can tell you that the main school of thought is that the Department of Ed stands in the way of school choice, and that is going to be a much easier path at the state and local level once they're in charge. So
Yeah,
we're hoping to
and
break that
just
open.
just for the people who are listening, school choice is instead of the state allocated money funding the school district, um the money actually goes straight to the parent, and the parent uses those funds to educate their child, whether it be public school, charter school, homeschool, co-op school. It basically lets the parent dictate where they think their kid will do better. You're not landlocked by a district. You're not landlocked
Right.
by really anything. You can take your kid 20 minutes down the road. You can do it right in your living room, and you can use those state funds that you pay for by property tax in Pennsylvania
Yeah.
to educate your child how you think is
Mhm.
best fitted.
It
Mhm.
makes sense. I don't know. We didn't go to that model earlier. And I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised about, I have to plead ignorance here. I didn't know Trump was going to talk about dismantling.
Dismantle.
Yeah, because the last Republican candidate who I remember who actually talked about that was Ron Paul back in 2012. And it's interesting because I know it was listed in that Project 2025, that whole hoax thing that they kept advertising, and like, this is Trump's platform, and I just kind of ignored all of it. But that was one of the things I actually agreed with on there. Like, he would never do that, and if he does, it would be great. And so, it's like you said, people don't know, they think it's some shocking thing, but this is not the
They,
first time
Right.
somebody's presented it.
Well,
they think we're
I think
like,
I brought it up to you. I think I brought it up to you when I was talking about why I liked Vivek so much.
And you mentioned it
In the
too.
spring,
Yeah.
that Vivek was like, we're gonna destroy the Department of Education and give all of that
Yeah.
money back to the states, and the states can dictate what's best for their
Right.
kids locally. But I mean, that's the other reason why I was excited that Vivek endorsed
Yeah.
Trump and is now working
Mhm.
with Doge.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Rachel? Yeah,
Sorry.
that's okay.
What was I forgot what I was gonna say. That's all right.
Yeah.
Let's just about the Department of Ed. It'll come back to me. That's
Yeah. I
okay.
mean,
I apologize.
I'm
Sorry.
excited about anything that's a part of Ron Paul's platform. Like, I'm just pleasantly surprised and proud of Trump for doing this. Like, it's a
Mm.
bold move. And
Oh, I think
stopping
I
all
was
these
just
people.
gonna say, check out that video on momsliberty.org. If you go under events, under summit, go to 23. You can listen to Vivek's too. And
I did.
DeSantis is, you already listened to it.
I already
You can
did.
listen too. Yeah, I figured I try to send you the Vivek stuff. He's a really neat guy, a lot of charisma, a lot of energy. He has even kind of a bigger energy in person than the camera picks up. So he is pretty cool. But yes, we were talking about dismantling the Department of Ed way back for a while now. So you
Yep.
can check that out. I know what I was going to say. So a lot of people think that like, oh, he's doing away with the Constitution or he is dismantling our government. I think it's important to hit that point so that, your audience understands that is not true. The Department of Ed is not part of our original government from its founding. There's a whole
Right.
bunch of organizations that have been invented, most of them, 3 letters. None of them are part of the original intent, which is a very limited government. So it's kind of grown and grown and grown. And that's what power does. It grows and feeds on itself. And that's why you have Doge coming in. It's like, okay, we need to trim this back to get closer to original intent. But there is no Department of Ed. We have, the executive branch, judicial, and legislative. And then, of course, you have the people, which are meant to keep the government in check and to uphold the Constitution. George Washington referred to the people as the Constitution's only keepers. So I kind of refer to us as like the only like kind of unknown, fourth branch would be the people. But other than that, there is no like fifth branch, like the DOE, like that. No, that's not true.
Right.
As we already mentioned, it only started in 1979. And also test scores and what we're getting for our money. So the costs of education went up, test scores and product went down, results went down. And if folks want to go to on our public Facebook page, we have a private Facebook group and a public Facebook page. We have a lot of the results up there. I need to go back and add more because people are requesting more. But a service our chapter provided was creating these little report cards for our public schools. And so we use the data, it's public data from, I think it's the Pennsylvania Department of Ed, and the PSSA data, which is your standardized testing. And we pulled together those numbers, and just to share briefly, so 29% to 74%, 29 to 74. So that's the broad one for all the schools in the county, English language arts, below proficient. So just under a third to 3/4 below proficient. Math, 39% to 86% below proficient. And then from there, we're doing individualized school report cards as people request them. So a bunch are up there, and I have some homework to do this weekend because there's like 4 or 5 more requests on there. But folks are very interested in how is my local school performing? What results are we getting for all those tax dollars, right?
Can I ask a question about standardized testing?
You can. I don't know that I'm an expert on that.
Okay, so we're homeschooling, and we're homeschooling because we feel like the public school system isn't equiping children for the next generation of workers that the country's going to need. So we were just like, we'd rather our kids want to be entrepreneurs. We'd rather them, want to be in a service industry, and we just don't feel like the public school system is going to help them do that, because what the public school system is a oppression model from the 1800s. And John D. Rockefeller, who was a big funder of public schooling, said we need a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. So was standard right. So my question is, was standardized testing the only reason why we even need standardized testing is a metric for the politicians to say we need more funds for those schools? So as Moms for Liberty, like, do you really think standardized testing is even viable? Because that doesn't mean the child is learning. All that means is that that school is meeting a quota, and if it's not meeting the quota, they need more money. And if they are meeting the quota, okay, well then maybe we need less money and we need more money for a football field.
I do think it's valuable in its own right as a uniform metric so that we can assess, are we winning, are we losing, how are we doing? What are we getting for those tax dollars? To your point though, okay, so when the standardized testing first started, the talking points coming out of the unions and the national superintendent associations, it was this is the best thing since sliced bread, right? We're going to know where we stand. We'll know where we need to improve. We need to do better. To your point, everything gets corrupted and goes downhill, with time if we don't endeavor to keep it pure. And so what I'm hearing you say is like, it's been exploited for these uses and those a means to an end for those ends, and that's not good. And I would agree, but what I think is interesting is those talking points. There's a lot of talking points. Oh, we're teaching to the test and all this stuff that came out to make PSSA scores unpopular in the public. Okay. I would suggest that you're being managed, because that coincided with those test scores looking horrible. When they were brand new and they were looking good, they were the best thing ever. And they have declined ever since the inception. And then they kind of created this situation where they were exposed and the public had data. And so now they want to say bad things about it so you don't give it any credence.
Okay,
So
okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering that. It's just I don't remember anything from my
yeah,
elementary.
my opinion.
I don't remember anything I was taught in school, but I
Yeah.
know that I passed every grade.
I
You
mean,
know, like
to your point,
like my son is remembering stuff, and we've never tested him ever with our
yeah,
homeschooling. We don't test him.
yeah,
We read books.
yeah,
We do activities together, and he's learning, and he's remembering things from a year ago. Where if he learned that in public school, he would have taken the test, got an A, B, or
yeah,
C, and then he would have forgot about it because, oh, I don't need to remember that anymore because the test is over.
But I
yeah.
guess your
No, you.
metric then is somewhat subjective. Like you can tell he's learned,
Well,
but how would you put that on a piece of paper to show how much he's learned?
Well, that's the beauty of school choice. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Because like the metric to put to put tax money and put it to like a test score I guess would make sense for a public school because I don't know however else you would rate
Well, I
the
think you
success of the
opened a
school.
door for the discussion on how the
Mhm.
Department of Ed and federalizing education leads right to corruption. Because what happens is there's always monies tied. There's always
Mhm.
strings.
Right.
So I think you bring valid points of like the corruption and like, so now we're all really stressed about these tests, but PS, they're doing bad on the tests because they're not teaching what they should be teaching and focus on academics. They're focused on social emotional learning and the whole child,
Right.
which our
Right.
schools, again, that's Marxist. Our
Mhm.
schools are not responsible for the whole child. When
Right.
and why did they take on this burden? We do not want community schools. That's big government. We give you a certain amount of money. And it's like you had one job, right? Like that whole meme. You had one job. That was to teach kids academics. It wasn't
Right.
to feed them breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It wasn't to clothe them with the community closet. It wasn't to take care of the whole child and talk about, what's your gender and all this stuff. And do you need counseling? And no, you
Right.
had one job. It was math, science, English, language arts. This is what your job was. And they've gotten so concerned. And to be fair, so many teachers and educators have a big heart, and I love that about them, but
Mhm.
it's been exploited. They're like, well, I can't teach a hungry kid. I get it. Big heart, good people, good as gold, but it's drift. Your job is to teach academics, and you've gotten away from that. And now we see, 1 in 3 kids aren't proficient in science, 1 in 4 in English language arts, and half of them aren't proficient in math. Like, this is not okay. Like, this is, I mean, and we're spending billions and billions and scores are declining. So I'm thankful that they kind of made their own bed because they gave us
Right.
these scores and now we can use them to say, hey, you're not doing the best job here and you need to improve. So they need to get back to basics, get back to teaching, have it be about academics and not indoctrination into Marxism, into all this other stuff where they're trying to expand the government through the schools. Just get back to basics, trim those tax dollars back, and you're gonna see, as you're saying, you have a very simple system and you just teach your kids, and they
Right.
learn things. Like, it's so wild. We just teach them things and they learn things. Like, it's so great.
Yeah.
So it's very simple.
So yeah, you're pretty much answering what was going to be my follow-up question, like how do we get those proficiency scores up? And
Mhm.
it sounds like part of it is eliminating.
Dismantle the Department of Ed. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, that and right, teaching the right things.
They
Yeah,
bring ideological mandates and
right.
actually force teachers to do things, that are not okay, that they may not be okay with, and getting away from teaching math, reading, science. I wish they'd bring handwriting back. So
Me
a lot
too.
of those mandates come
Yeah.
in through, yeah, I think it's really important for self-esteem and also for like motor control and stuff. Like, I think it's a
Well,
very
math is a huge issue for me. Um, they're not doing longhand math,
Mhm.
like past the third or fourth grade,
Mm,
in some schools. So it's like, okay, you learn,
Common Core or
yeah, you learn regular math for a certain time. Then okay, we don't have time for that. Let's go to calculators. Like
yeah.
oh yeah.
do all your math on a tablet. What widget
Yeah.
does every single tablet have? A
Mhm.
Calculator. Yep.
calculator. Like
Yeah.
you you know 2 + 2 = 4, but
Mhm.
why does 2 + 2 = 4? Some of these kids don't even know that. They don't know why 2 + 2 = 4 because they've never done it on a pencil and paper. They've
Yeah.
never learned
Well,
it that way.
I would encourage you guys, again, when the resources on the national page, Summit from this year, well, every year we had great resources at Summit. But you were mentioning like Marxism and 1800s and when some of this came in and Rockefeller and all that stuff. This year's Summit, there's always wonderful resources. But this year there were some exceptional ones on Marxism. 2 different presenters shared on that. One of which is James Lindsay. He's just a staple teacher,
Oh, yeah.
professor with
Mhm.
us,
Yes.
Dr. Lindsay. So he's
I
wonderful.
follow him on X. He's good.
Yeah, and his New Discourses podcast is great. But if you check out his, and there was another presenter as well at Summit, it was so. I was trying to take screenshots and I couldn't keep up because the slides are flying so fast. I couldn't even get the pictures off. He was just going so fast through our history. But he really takes a deep dive into like why kids aren't learning, and one of them was the shift, well, like you said, with Rockefeller and wanting to move to having a working, the worker class be expanded. So they didn't want them to be too smart or too independent. They don't want you to really be self-governed. They want you to get in
Right.
line and listen and get in there, cog. Don't be doing your own
Absolutely.
thing.
Yeah.
So that was kind of counter to their goals, but not in the original. I think it's interesting if you look at Benjamin Rush, he is the original founding father. He's a signer of the Declaration of Independence. And he is known as the father of education. Read his stuff. It's staggering. Not to mention mixing religion in there, you know. But when you look at the original intent of public education to perpetuate the republic, I would read his writings on it because he is the father of it in our country.
Very cool.
And so we've seen a huge slide away from that. And those videos from Summit will take you through that. And we just need to get back to it. Just get back to basics.
So about Marxism.
Yeah.
So we know that the colleges are all been infected with Marxism, and there's not much we can do locally about that. But there's also been statistics that have shown that there's fewer male teachers than ever before.
Mm.
And one could say that one gender is more likely to go left than another. So if statistically, not
Is there
saying
research? Is there like data on that?
there is
I mean,
data on
I can
that.
see it.
No, there is data on that. Especially young women are vastly going left, and then young men are for the first time going right. So as the years go on, if the school systems are almost 80% young women are the teachers and they're left leaning because they went to college, and young men aren't going to college as much, what is the world going to look like for young boys who are in the school system and it already doesn't fit them? Like public school to me, handcuffs young boys.
Question. Okay.
It handcuffed me. It handcuffed a lot of my friends. You know, boys aren't meant to sit, and boys aren't meant to sit for 8 hours a day and
Right.
read a book and be told what to do.
Right.
That's just not in our genetics. It's not in our biology. That's why girls do better in testing. Girls, are just doing great things in college and education, and boys are being left behind. And I'm saying this because
Oh,
I have 3 boys.
yeah. Some boys. I think it's like I think it's fair
Yeah,
to throw out
not
gender
all. Yeah,
differences, but then you have like philosophers and doctors, and they just want to sit there and learn and talk. And all children need to move and play. But certainly, I do think there are maybe some broad strokes, some gender differences there. Sure. So to your question, for me personally, in my worldview, in my what's closest to my world, being Moms for Liberty, you have a lot of very strong liberty-minded moms. So from my worldview, I would say that like I see the women being more into patriotism and liberty and the men needing to step up more. So I kind of see the inverse of what you were describing there, but that certainly could be true. I understand my specific view of the world could be skewed because of my life, the way my life is set up. But I think you're saying that like, okay, so we have this like really woke, far left female teachers, and what's that going to do? Right. Is that the
right. It's more of the lack of male teachers more now than ever. And that it's becoming more of a female job more now than ever. And if they're almost always going to college, and then when you go to college you are basically turned into a Marxist, how as Moms of Liberty in your organization, how are we going to fight an oncoming train of young women who have been radicalized?
Absolutely. The answer is like right in front of you. So the power goes to the parents. In this case, historically, it's been the mom. If the dads want to step up, great, we welcome you. Come on board. But the key is to have the parents empowered and not the school. Who do the children belong to? If they need the mama bears are the ones who will back up the woke far left. Yeah. So you have to have the law on your side for this, which historically we have the Supreme Court rulings that parental rights are fundamental. So we have to use that while we have it to stand on it. I mean, I don't want to name names, but talking to legislators, when I say parental rights are fundamental and I start talking Supreme Court decisions, they don't know what I'm talking about. That's a problem that they haven't heard of that. Right. So we have to stand on it and use it while we have it, but so you give the power to the parent, you clip the wings of the woke teacher so that they can't go behind your back and teach your kids things that you're not comfortable with. Right. Yeah, that's the fix.
That's interesting. I never heard that statistic before. I mean, I know plenty of woke fathers.
Well, no, so
it could be true,
So I don't have the actual statistic with me. It's just that the younger generation from 18 to 30, young men are, for the first time in 100 years, tilting right. And it's actually the polar opposite for women. They're tilting further left than ever before. Yeah. And then I remember, and when I was in school, there was probably 5 male teachers from kindergarten to 12th grade. And most of the other ones were women.
Yeah.
So and there is statistics. If I had a Jamie like Rogan does, I would say, hey Jamie, pull up the statistics stating how do women vote, how do males vote? And there is a strike, there is a line, right? You can see where women tend to vote blue and men tend to vote vote red. That's all I was pointing out.
You might be right. I just like when I went back to school and my kids go to Manheim Township, and I didn't notice that kind of disparity, but not to say you're wrong. But so Rachel, your kids go to Penn Manor, or you're part of that school district. Right? Oh, Warwick. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Even worse. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Did you
I have one that graduated. Yeah.
Okay.
And I have one in cyber. Yeah.
Right.
I was awakened to what was happening during COVID. For my one is special needs, and I saw what they were teaching him, and so I eventually made a decision to part ways with the district. And to your point of school choice, just to go back to that for 1 second, it's really important that people understand that right now, when they do make the decision to pull their child, when they pull to cyber, the tax dollars do follow the child and go to cyber. So it really does send a very loud and powerful message to the schools. Those tax dollars are also a lot more when the child's special needs too. So that's good to know. When you do choose to homeschool, and I'm definitely not against homeschooling, but it's kind of a gift to the public schools because they don't have the child and aren't delivering the service and get to keep all the money. And I'm very opposed to homeschool parents not receiving funds for the work that they're doing. Why? I mean, that to me is like a crime. Why is a school getting that money and the parents doing the work? So I want to see those funds, follow the homeschool parents as well. So
Well, our kids would be going to Donegal.
Mhm.
And we were considering Donegal until they announced they were doing the social emotional learning in Donegal School
Yeah.
District. So that was like
All
the, yeah.
I would
That
be
was the
stunned
nail in
if
the
there's a
coffin
district
for us.
that-
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be stunned if there's a district that's not doing social emotional learning, just because of the globalist influence there,
Right.
the nationalization of education, the National Superintendents Association is all of that came in through them. So first you had CRT, and then it kind of gave way to social emotional learning. It was this nice, cute, packaged, and a lot of the stuff in social emotional learning, it looks great and it's fine in the beginning.
It's great, and actually,
Yeah.
for some people, it
Yeah.
actually helps their kids.
Yeah, and that's
It
fine.
does. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, oh, my kid's angry. Can you help them calm down? But we tip over the line somewhere with the whole child thing. And then you have teachers trying to be armchair counselors, and they're not. They're practicing outside the scope
Mhm.
of their, so there's like some stuff there, like, oh, it looks nice and it's fine and da da da. But there's also some inherent problems with that because people are, I can find things like when my kid loses a water bottle, I can find it, but that does not make me a detective, Like, so just because a counselor can like teach you,
That's
like,
really good.
hey, breathe, like, doesn't mean you're a counselor, So practicing outside their scope. But really, yes, some of it does look fine at the beginning levels. But if you go, well, they changed their website after I started outing them on this. But if you go to CASEL, which is the Collaboration for Social Emotional Learning, and I printed it out. So I have that somewhere, because they always change as you expose them, and they just change their wording. But the social emotional learning is built and intended to give way to transformative social emotional learning, which the purpose of that is to fundamentally alter the culture of America.
Yeah.
They are doing social engineering. If you look at their own words and their own research, they will share with you that they're doing social engineering. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be engineered by some think tank, with globalist ties, and I certainly don't want my kids to be.
From what I read, from what I remember from social emotional learning from Donegal, it was they were saying, oh, we're just trying to teach kids to be more tolerant of others.
Right.
And then my response was, what if their actions are intolerable?
Right.
And they're like, oh, well, that's what it's for, so that your kid can be more accepting of other people.
They would probably call you like
a bigot, a
hate
racist,
group.
sexist,
Yeah.
homophobic, xenophobic, everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it seems there's a difference between anti-bullying agenda, which is great. Like, I love it when they teach that in school. And it doesn't seem like a lot of kids get the message, especially 7th and 8th grade. Those are hard years. But yeah, I mean,
for sure.
it kind of gets convoluted, like where
anti-bullying is different than social emotional learning.
it is different, but I think it kind of gets lopped into the same window of same umbrella by people who kind of maybe oppose what Moms for Liberty is doing.
The key difference is with the neo-Marxist cultural revolution, they're, not respecting your First Amendment rights. So if you're a Christian and you say, well, I believe that boys are boys and girls are girls and God made us that way, they're going to say, you can't say that, that's hate speech or being intolerant, blah, blah, blah. But that's your beliefs. And you have a right to those beliefs, whether you're in a public school or anywhere. The government doesn't have the right to dictate your beliefs. I mean, we're really getting into founding father stuff that they understood better than us. We didn't understand it. We let it slide. And so now we really need to reclaim the torch of victory. I mean, I don't think people understood how far the neo-Marxist, the cultural revolution had gone. And the next thing that comes after a cultural revolution is the actual, violent overthrow. They love breadlines because they can take advantage of that. That is when people are most likely to vote Marxist, is the more dire things are. So they really do. I mean, if you think of, you know, the main pillars of society, you know, from big business, where, you know, you have the what was those scores called? I can't think of the name of it right now, but they actually have scoring, like a woke scoring system for big businesses. You think
Yeah,
infiltration.
ESG scores.
ESG.
Yeah.
ESG. Yeah, I could remember the S and the G. I couldn't remember the other letter.
Yeah.
Which is probably equity. So I should probably remember that. So equity equals equitable outcomes, which is no
Right.
different than communism, right?
Impossible
Marxism.
as well.
Yeah.
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 I
Yeah.
heard that explained really well once, the difference between equity and equality. Like equality is
Yeah.
very different. Like, sure, there should be equality among everyone, but when you talk about equity, what you're really talking about is redistribution of wealth.
Yes. Correct.
It's not just
Equality
that
means
though; it's
equal
impossible.
opportunity.
Equity itself is impossible because there's
It's
only
equal
one.
outcomes,
There's only
right.
one LeBron James. I
Right.
will never be LeBron James.
Exactly. It's
I
trying to,
can't even jump
you're
2
trying to
inches.
force equal
Like,
outcomes, which is impossible to have equal
Impossible.
outcomes.
And
Right.
equal, there's like, just ask people, what is the difference between equal outcomes and Marxism or communism if they're not familiar with the term Marxism?
Right.
There is none. That's what
Yeah,
they're doing. They're
that's what it
guaranteeing
is.
it's communism. Yeah. And that, so people need to stop, you know, playing patty cake with the devil there with that term equity, because they think it's some nice thing. It is not.
Right.
You are having a tea party with the devil there. It ain't not good.
If we
Right.
could switch off of schools, I wanted to ask her about like what you guys are doing, like your activism in the healthcare realm.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
oh, go ahead. You start. Yeah.
basically, I can't switch off of schools. And I kind of skipped that part earlier when I was sharing a little bit about us. We basically, of all the pillars of society, we basically function primarily in public education and K through 12.
Okay.
So our mission to preserve America, that's our battlefront, is K through 12. That's where we're
Okay.
holding the line. So anything that has to do with, you know, founding fathers, founding documents, public education, that's the realm in which we work. And a lot of times people try to pull us into college and we don't even really go there. So,
Mhm.
Okay.
so I can't really do much for you. Well, the
returning
one thing
point.
there's a caveat to that though, because public education's connected to everything. And that
Right.
would be
That's why
clear.
that was my question.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Um,
in the state of Pennsylvania, at the age of 14, your kid can actually declare them to be basically an adult medically, and they can force you as a parent to leave the doctor's office room so that your child can be one-on-one with the doctor without you there.
well,
That's
force
law. That's law.
force
in
is a strong
Pennsylvania.
word. And remember, your rights are like a muscle. You're going to use it or you're going to lose it. So do not walk out of that room and go get a
Well,
different doctor.
well, the law was passed, so I mean,
Well, the law is that the child has some medical sovereignty over their own medical rights there. But I mean, they still live under your house, right? So like, is that child saying get out? Because that child's then in charge.
yeah,
And
yeah.
if that child's saying get out, then like, oh, like I guess you wanted me to clean your room, do your laundry, make your dinner. Oh, okay, big britches, you know. So like you have tools for autonomy, like use them as a parent, you know.
Right. My question is, why would Moms for Liberty per se, given the reach you have, add that parental injustice to your like
It
to your movement?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
to me, because
yeah.
to me, with
You
transgenderism,
yeah.
with transgenderism and the mass psychosis of children in public schools, you
Yeah.
have whole groups of girls saying they're transgender at the same time in the same school. It's not that
Mhm.
they're actually transgender; it's that it's a mass psychosis, and they're doing it all together because they want to feel special.
Social
Social
contagion.
contagion.
Yes, it's a social contagion. Sorry, that's what it should. That's what I should have said. So, like, I
Yeah,
feel like Moms of Liberty,
for Liberty, yeah.
it kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah. I know you're right, it does. And I think it's a great point. You know, I kind of liken it to like Planned Parenthood, like not our realm, not our battlefields. We're not
Mhm.
doing that as an organization. At least individuals can do whatever they want.
Right.
But that's, you know, we're not taking up the torch for that. But then all of a sudden it's like, oh, guess who was a speaker in the health class today? Someone from the local Planned Parenthood.
No.
Yeah, sure. Oh yeah, sure.
What?
So like it all connects. So, but we do mind our, P's and Q's on, the connection there. But to your point, yes, there is a connection there on that particular law. And I mean, I would be for changing that law. I think when a child comes of age is a tricky question. Historically, we've considered it 18. I don't think that 14-year-olds should have full medical sovereignty. I would have to look into that law. I don't think they have full. I mean, I think a lot of this started with like, can they get themselves like mental health help if they need it without their parents knowing like what they're talking about in counseling,
Right. That's an issue as well. That shouldn't happen either.
Oh yeah.
Even at the age of 14, you shouldn't. A 14-year-old should not be able to have private conversations with another adult without the full consent of a parent.
And so a lot of that's happening in the public schools. And I just want to be clear that there's also situations in which it's not, in which the parent knows the child's in counseling in school, the parent signed the consent,
Sure.
So we're for parental rights. But in those cases, so be it. But when it's happening without parental consent and it's kind of getting snuck in the back door and stuff.
Yeah.
And I know there was a program called Couth, that was big elsewhere in the state, like Bucks County and different counties. So not my county, so I'm not as familiar with it, but I believe that there was some concerns with bringing in mental health without parental consent. And so that we had some kind of a win on that recently in Bucks County as well. So I'm telling you, it's parental rights for the win. It lines up under the Constitution. And that's the way to go, to win these fights. We have to stand on our God-given inalienable rights. And when we do, we win. And we've had a ton of wins lately. Check out the public Facebook group, the private Facebook group. We also have a website that people can check out. There's a lot of wins to see. So, and they just came here in the past month or so, just a flurry of wins. It's been wonderful.
Right. Did you have some specifics like from Penn Manor or something you wanted to talk about?
Oh, right. Yes. So Penn Manor. So there, let's see where to start for you. I'm going to start with the Biden administration and the Department of Ed, since we were talking about them, which is under the executive branch. So basically what happened was the Biden administration tried to, in my opinion, incredibly violate the Constitution and the separation of powers and use the Department of Ed to basically change law and essentially write law and reinterpret law. So the executive branch, just for viewers who may not have got this in civics class, the executive branch oversees, the military and all your executive functions. Judicial does all your judges and courtrooms, and the judges interpret the law, and your legislative is your Congress. And so they make the laws. So your executive branch, this would be considered tyranny if we didn't have the separation of powers. So your executive branch should not be writing laws or interpreting laws. Those belong to the legislative and the judicial.
Right.
So what we saw was a pretty big breach of that with when the Biden administration went ahead and decided to reinterpret Title IX. And what they wanted to do was, force that on the public schools through the Department of Ed, that you needed to do this, or you would lose, your funding, or, your lunch money, and those kind of things, the strings that are always attached. And so with the rewriting of Title IX, it really changed from biological sex. And just I guess I should back up a second for the viewers. So Title IX is kind of, Josh, you might disagree with me, generally popular, generally well accepted in the culture. It gave us women's sports. That's one of the things that's most famous for. Later, some additions of what we consider sexual harassment, like harassment in the workplace and stuff. Most of that rests on Title IX. So I don't know what y'all think, but as a woman, I appreciated playing sports, you know, in middle school and high school. I appreciated having my own sports team and not, I mean, it just wouldn't have been much of a competition if I had to compete with men physically. So I appreciated
Mhm.
having that opportunity. I certainly appreciate, you know, having separate spaces for locker rooms and bathrooms. I really don't want them in there with me. And I don't want that, you know, for my children either. And obviously sexual harassment and stuff. So things that I think culturally most people in America have celebrated and feel are good changes. And so that was the original Title IX. So the rewrite that
Wait,
came.
can I ask a question? Sorry.
Mhm.
I wouldn't disagree with any of that. I don't know.
Okay.
Yes,
I didn't know
yeah,
anything.
yes,
Well, she's not playing
I'm
sports.
libertarian. I am a libertarian, but I mean, I do I think the government should have needed Title IX to like give women the right to do things? No, because I think their
Okay.
right as a human should have always been there. I think it's sad that the culture didn't already have that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, like I wouldn't disagree with any of that. If anything, they were giving you your human rights like back, but they had to do
Yeah.
it by force.
And I think
Um,
that might be some of the discussion around it was like, should the government be giving, well, I mean, some of it is just the role of women and sexism and should women be doing these things? But then some of it is like, is it the government's job to be
right.
creating this? But to your point, and to
I'm
equality
not a sexist,
and
everyone listening. I am not,
Sorry,
I'm not a sexist at all.
I did not mean that to come out that way.
I just believe in gender roles, and that's just me personally. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Did not mean that to come out that way.
All
So
right,
good.
continue. We're good.
Yeah.
We're
Some
good.
We're good.
people have some concerns along those lines. Us three do not. We think it's great.
Okay.
But most, to the point that you're making, most people agree this has been enculturated. Most of us agree these are good changes. And you're just affirming the inalienable rights that are already there, you know, because
Yeah.
we're all
Yeah.
equal when it comes to inalienable rights. I may not be equal
Mhm.
in bench lifting or something or swimming or running, but like we're equal in terms of inalienable rights. Okay.
Right.
Right.
So we all agree on that.
Yeah,
So
I just wanted to like make everyone know that's listening. I'm not, I'm in no way a sexist libertarian.
I think it was
You
more the
assured
part
me,
of like
Jack.
the role of, is it the government's role to do it or not? And I was not really super clear on what all the arguments were against it because most of the folks I know are for it. So anyway, didn't mean to throw you under the bus. You're not against it.
Right.
So the Biden administration redefined it from what was always presumed to be biological sex at birth to your whatever your gender identity is. And so it got, when the lawyers and stuff are looking at the implications of the changes, it got pretty crazy pretty quickly, where it would basically say, like, if you are a transgender male, like a guy identifying as a female in a woman's locker room, and that female says like, oh my gosh, you know, you're a guy, get out. That female would be sexually harassing him because she's making him feel uncomfortable, right? It took everything we know that was like good and right and true, and it flipped it inverse. Yeah, so all the protections would go based on gender identity, which is also really confusing legally for a lot of reasons. And that's where our organization, as well as many others, as well as many states, they got sued a lot. They got sued a lot, and they lost a lot. So we're still working on that. I think there's going to be some more information coming out on that soon, but you have to, you know, we likely would go the whole way to the Supreme Court. And there's just a lot to that that goes above my head. I am not a lawyer, you know, nor am I the legal counsel for Moms for Liberty. So just kind of sharing some of my personal knowledge and understanding of the situation. And you can read up on all of that with better resources, again, online through the website. There's fabulous resources that we have on this topic, and you can look at all the cases and everything. So you can get better resources there than just listening to me. But all this went through, and you know, the biggest concern was, again, violation of the First Amendment. And that's where the Independence Law Center came in as a law firm that primarily defends the First Amendment. Now there's different caveats to the First Amendment, you know, from freedom of religion to freedom of speech to other ones that maybe didn't apply as much, like freedom of assembly, freedom of petition, freedom of the press. So I'm not talking about those three. But the freedom of religion and the freedom of speech, with the new redefining of Title IX, you would have to use someone's pronouns or that sexual harassment. In my mind and in the mind of other people, that is how that was interpreted. That is a violation of the First Amendment. When you say that it's your deeply held religious belief that you are the gender that you were born, and that's your faith and whatnot, or just your conscience, your rights of conscience, however you want to word that, and you are, through threat of sexual harassment, there can be discipline, there can be fines, you can be sued, you know. So there's all kinds of implications of this. So, you know, if your student is, you know, not wanting to use someone's incorrect pronouns, and you were talking earlier about like, well, we're just trying to help your child be more tolerant, you know, and then all of a sudden your child has like detention, or has to like sit in a corner, or can't go to lunch, or can't go to recess because they didn't use the right pronouns. Those are the kinds of changes that we're seeing. So the opposite of free speech is compelled speech. So when I tell you that you have to, like, I'm looking at Josh, he is a boy. Okay, that's what I believe and know. You know, like, let's not do like the 1984 thing. Like when they say like 2 + 2 is 5, you know, and I'm like, well, I knew you were a boy. And like, now you're a girl, but like, I know you were a boy. And if I am forced and compelled to say that, that's compelled speech. That's the direct opposite of free speech. Right. So that's just a little background on like what happened with Title IX, the changes that came through from the Biden administration, which they used the Department of Ed to do. So that shows you why the federalization of government was so important for corruption, and why we want to get rid of it. So locally, many school districts were turning to Independence Law Center because they specialize in the First Amendment. So what they were doing was hiring them as special counsel to consult on this issue and all the issues around it, you know, pronouns, locker rooms, bathrooms, sports teams, all of that. So they wanted to bring them in as special counsel.
Thanks.
So
sorry about this. I I got some kind of a frog in my throat, and you're like,
yeah,
you're killing it, and you're explaining everything. I'm just like, oh no.
I'll just let her go and, you know, let her riff, and then we'll come back. So from there, we can get into specifically what happened at Penn Manor if you want.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed a little bit of your dialogue.
Okay, I was just kind of giving the context of why the school district were wanting to turn to the ILC, to the Independence Law Center.
Right.
And it's because they specialize in First Amendment rights. And the concern is that the changes from Title IX would violate those rights. So that's why we're wanting a special counsel for folks who affirm and stand up for the First Amendment.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So what happens, and Penn Manor's not alone. They've been hired in many districts for many reasons, but for this recent topic, they were hired in Warwick and E-Town and Penn Manor. And I know some parents in Lampeter Strasburg had some interest, and I'm not sure if they're going to pursue that at this point or not, but so at Penn Manor, they really wanted to hire this particular law firm, and just the amount of hate and hysteria that came out in reaction to it was surprising and off the charts. It has to do with perceptions. You know, they believe that the ILC is a hate group because the Southern Poverty Law Center said they're a hate group.
Oh, yeah. They're the authority, right?
Yeah, and
is that the same Southern Poverty Law Center that had protesters in Atlanta protesting the new cop university? And
I don't know about that,
but
I thought you were going to say it's the same one that deemed Moms for Liberty a hate group.
Right.
and a terrorist. Did they say you're a?
I think they also paid out a $2 million lawsuit for smearing somebody.
Yes.
I talked about that on my one Lancaster's propaganda. I think I mentioned it in that episode. But
so anyway, they had to pay out for. Okay.
Yeah, they smeared somebody. Yeah, I mean, that's what they do. So.
I mean, in my experience, let's talk about the Fifth Amendment a little bit, because culturally we've lost our teachings of that as we are teaching civics the way we should. And culturally, what that means, I understand that's for the law, but I feel like the same values should be upheld culturally as well, if you understand it. So you have the right to face your accuser. You have the right to know what you're being accused of. You have a right to be, judged by, a jury of your peers after the evidence is reviewed. So when Southern Poverty Law Center decided to declare Moms for Liberty Lancaster County a hate group, none of that happened. And even just socially, culturally, like, I had 0 requests, 0 from them. Like, hey, we think you're doing this. Is that true? Do you want to rebut that? Do you want to speak? No, nothing. So anyone can, you guys are doing like a pin drop right now. So, I mean, anyone can say anything about anyone else, and it can be incredibly hurtful, incredibly destructive, and incredibly incorrect. And in our culture, because we've gotten away from the values of the Fifth Amendment, it doesn't really matter. People are so uncritical in their thinking that they hear stuff and they just believe it. And that's really wrong. And we need to reclaim that territory.
Well, you can also just say what you want to say because it's the First Amendment as well. I mean, we have.
But there's limits to that. You can't like slander and libel.
Well, I'm a
There's
free
limits.
speech absolutist, so I think you should be able to say whatever you want to say. Because if you lose that right, then you don't even have sovereignty of yourself.
I obviously love and uphold the First Amendment and free speech, but Josh, if I'm going around telling people that you killed someone and that's not true, and that has severe consequences for your reputation, like, that's not cool. There's limits.
LMP didn't try to straighten the facts out.
I guess we just see different on
that
freedom of speech.
Yes.
And it's only because, I mean, I guess people can choose to believe someone over yourself, but at the end of the day, at what point can you were talking about how Moms for Liberty is standing up for parental rights, right? To me, what you guys are doing is great, and then you also have to realize that people have the right to say whatever they want to say, and in the minute you start to restrict that, you open that door to restricting speech, just like how you could open the door to limiting parental freedom, parental rights. So it's like, how far do you want to open the door before we're right where we are right now,
Yeah, well, I mean, there are limits, I mean, you have parents that really abuse children and different things, and some people are so pure that they're like, well, then that's that parent's choice. I don't believe that. Like, where's the line? That could be a whole different debate, like a round table for where your rights come from.
Yeah, I used to be of the mindset that like free speech is there up to a point, but like, just because you say something, the other people have to make the decision about what you said.
Yeah,
if you yell fire in a crowded theater, it's not your fault that someone actually thought there was a fire in that crowded theater. Now listen, this is nuanced.
I think
this is a nuanced conversation. We're going off the rails, but
Josh loves the weeds. He always wants to go in the weeds.
Yeah, no, you just totally remind me. I had this whole intro prepared about like the first time we met Rachel. We were at that round table. It was about what is a right at the Libertarian, the Libertarian
Where
function.
did they come from?
And I was sitting on the end with you, and I felt like the two of us were kind of kindred spirits. I mean, I agreed with pretty much everything you said, and also sympathized because neither of us were getting any airtime, because the people on the other end.
I was trying.
Not you, Josh.
I was
Josh, you were supposed to be moderating.
They were dominating.
I was moderating it.
That's right.
I was moderating it, and Tom Jones was like 1 minute, and Roy was like 5 minutes.
And I just kept being like, "Can I talk too? Can I talk
too?" I was not supposed to be the moderator of that event. Adam just threw me in.
What Tom Jones held down the fort for us.
He held it down almost too much.
Danny and I got a few more minutes.
But anyway, I'm glad to hear you talk more today. That's my point.
And I apologize for going to the weeds.
Oh, you're okay. That's fine.
Good.
No, those are great discussions. And I I love that. And I that's what Americans should do. We should care about the First Amendment and debate it and where's the line. And those are the kinds of healthy discussions that we used to have all the time openly and just walk away friends. And Americans as a culture have gotten away from that. So no, I welcome it. That's totally fine. And we can agree on some things and disagree on others and all is well. So why were we talking about that? I think it had to do with Penn Manor.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah. So Penn Manor hired the law firm and
Yes.
And
Yes. So
what
they
happened?
wanted to hire the law firm and they get a lot of pushback from the community. And then, you know, I think a lot of people locally that are maybe more conservative tend to, I don't want to step on toes or offend anyone, but like tend to not be as active. So
Yeah.
sometimes the far left forgets that they're there. You know, they kind of thinking they're in their own echo chamber. And so the first, which is our fault because we don't always show up. So that's fair, you know. So the first meeting I was at was in the like large group media room at Penn Manor. It was packed and they opened the partition to make it even larger. They took 2 large rooms and made it even larger. There was hundreds of people there and packed. There was a lot of people standing in the back because we ran out of seats. The unions being very organized and tending to lean, you know, more far left, had turned out a ton of teachers. You know, they were all like wearing red, you know, wearing the same shirts and stuff. And, you know, it was quiet and it was tense. And then at one point a comment was made, and I apologize, some of the details in my memory are a little murky because it's been a few months now. But a comment was made and the far left in the crowd just erupted. And it was so packed and it was so tense that like the cheering, like I could feel it in my chest. Like the roar that came out of the crowd actually like bass, like reverberated in my chest. Because that is the type of passion that we're talking about in the communities right now for some of these issues. And sympathetically, empathetically, if I thought that they were a hate group, I would probably be quite against it myself, you know, sure. That's not true though. And you can just make those allegations against anyone. And we as Americans sharing the values of the Fifth Amendment, is it true? What is the exact allegation? Is there evidence of that? How does the ILC identify? Do they see themselves as the way that you're saying them? Like let them have their rebuttal. You know, those are all values that belong to the founding fathers that if our culture had them, to your point, Josh, like the free speech, when you get it wrong, it wouldn't matter as much because if the culture upheld those values, because then it would all just get hashed out, you know. For Moms for Liberty Lancaster, we had challenged 2 books. We had challenged, well, 3 books, but one got kicked out of the challenge process. Me and Earl and the Dying Girl and The Female of the Species, and Gender Queer. And we used the challenge procedure process that was written into policy before any of this. I'm not quite sure how that's, you know, people want to say that's book banning. I'm like, well, then how long have public schools been engaging in book banning? Because they had this policy that, you know, this is the right way. They directed us to, we said, we have concerns about the content of these books. And they said, here's the right next step to do. Here's the policy and procedure. And we did it. And then everyone said, oh, you're a bunch of book banners. And it was at that point that Southern Poverty Law Center gave us that hate group designation. So that's what it's based on, using a policy, the book challenge procedure that existed prior to us that we were directed to as the correct next step for our concern. Right. So that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
It's so crazy to me that a law center would think that a book called what was the queer book called? I don't want to miss
Gender Queer.
Yeah, Gender Queer. A book like that, banning that is a bad thing. It's so crazy to me that they would consider it a bad thing.
Well, there's
a
couple.
I mean, it wouldn't be banned. It would be not in public schools, you know? So book banning, as the far left is thinking of it, is more like what Hitler did, where they're not allowed in the culture and they're burns and they're, you know, you can't get access to the book. It's to use a Russian word, is like behind the Iron Curtain, you know. So, you know, like we don't allow cigarettes. Well, maybe we do now. Cigarettes, alcohol, drugs, like, well, drugs were illegal, but cigarettes and alcohol, you know, not allowed in public schools, and we don't consider that banned, you know. No, you as a teacher, you can have a glass of wine, you know, at home after school, but we don't want you giving it to kids during class and sit there and drink a glass of wine with them. And we don't kind of react hysterically like, oh, you're bringing back prohibition or something. Like, no, we just don't think it's appropriate for that setting, right? It's not age appropriate.
Right.
We agreed to that as a culture. That is why the book challenge procedure was in place prior to 2021 when all this like took off. So anyway, quite hysteria. And to your point, Danny, yeah, LNP, I'm being sarcastic, came in and just cleared all that right up. No, they said, let me stir a pot and try to sell some papers. Let me try to like use this and exploit it to sell papers.
Yeah. I mean, people who listen to this podcast have heard me talk about LNP before. But I mean, there's two really big problems in our society. One is people who get spoon-fed their news.
Yes.
And take the word for, take the news's word for everything they hear. And the second, people succumb to these logical fallacies of invoking authority. Like just because you invoke the SPLC as your authority doesn't mean the right. Like, I mean,
and it goes back to
that.
that difference in value systems from like what I call Americanism and neo-Marxism. It's like, do you believe in you should be critically analyzing this? You should be looking for evidence. You should ask questions and you should decide for yourself? Or do you believe that you should put your head down, be a cog in the wheel, and do what those experts tell you?
Right.
Difference in belief systems, in value systems, and philosophies. Yeah.
And it's a shame that you've gotten the pushback you have, like the hate group. I think you mentioned, like, does anyone ever call you like a Christian nationalist? And I've written about that term also because nobody in the LNP can actually define what it means. Like they just like to wield that and wield other terms like far right or whatever.
I would really encourage people to follow that kind of process that is the values of the Fifth Amendment. You know, what is being said? How is it being defined? Is it something that person would endorse or identify with? What is their rebuttal to it? So yes, unfortunately, we have been called that. And I find that particularly offensive, even just as a Christian, you know, like because of what they're attaching to it. So it may get real squirrely there. It's like holding a water balloon. Well, what does this mean? And it's like trying to squeeze a water balloon to find out what the heck they're saying by it. So I went, so there is a local pastor, two local pastors, one in particular though, that I guess is kind of leading it. And then a reverend who is helping or speaking at it or something. And he is from the Lancaster seminary. And interestingly, oddly, his auto-generated Facebook ID actually has 666 in the identity, which is kind of creepy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so he kind of has this made up term of Christian nationalism made up in terms of like they're defining it however they want. And he put together this whole presentation on it. And he started his own church. And it was like this info session on like what Christian nationalism is. So I went. So
what did you learn?
That
wow.
You heard it here, folks. She went.
So me and some of the moms and a friend of mine and his wife, we were always like, hey, yo, this is going down. We should check this out. Because you have a right to face your accuser and you have a right to know what the allegations are and what's being said about you. Right. So I went and I took pictures of everything. And I wasn't being sneaky. I was there, you know, not hiding myself. LNP was there. They recognized me and left that one out of the papers that I was there. And I went up to the reverend and then the main pastor afterwards, introduced myself, told them who I was, let them know that I sat through your presentation, you know, and I was, you know, calm and nice and civil like this. And I said, I just want to make sure you're aware that I'm here. I saw all of this. I don't believe, and by the way, yes, in terms of being Christian nationalist, our name, Moms for Liberty, was actually on the screen. Like, it's in the slides.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Very clear.
Uh,
We're talking
yes.
about you.
Yeah, he was like really clear that there was finger pointing here. That this is you, and you believe this, and you do this, and you endorse this, and you would affirm. They'll put statements up and say that, like, we affirm this statement. And I'm like, I don't affirm that statement. I don't agree with your statement, you know? I can send you some of that stuff and we can kind of pick the weeds on that if you want. But so I went up and introduced myself, politely said, hey, I did look at what you had to say. And I am the chair of the organization for Lancaster County. And, you know, we don't believe a lot of the things you were saying. We don't endorse that. We don't advocate for that. Like, you're just really missing the mark here on understanding us and what we do. And you would think, if you were especially talking to a pastor, that that would be the end of it. And the Reverend, I actually really referenced Matthew 18. And his kids were at my son's birthday party. They were at my house playing. I was like, excuse me, you know me. Remember before COVID? And it was like this mind was like expanding while we were talking. And I was like, you know, Matthew 18, for those who don't know, says, like, you know, how to handle it if you have a concern about a Christian sinning or getting off course or doing the wrong thing, that you should pull them aside and have a private conversation with them. You should take witnesses with you. You should escalate up through the church. There's steps for handling concerns when you have them. And again, none of that happened. And I was like, you know me. We were friends on Facebook. Your wife and I were friends on Facebook. Your kid was at my house. You have access to me. You could just say, hey, we're scared that you're a Christian nationalist. Can I talk to you about that? And allow me to tell you what we believe and that we're not how you're defining us. Happy to do that. And you didn't do any of that. Instead, you like put it up on a big screen and toured the county giving presentations.
Wow.
So basically said, hey, we're not those things. We don't believe that. So you can basically stand corrected that this is not true. And you would think in a normal world with a normal person, or especially with a pastor, that it would have stopped there. However, I had some friends call me up that they haven't stopped and they're traveling around the county with their little presentation. They're going to churches and they're fear mongering. They're spreading fear and they're saying things that just aren't true, you know? So we'll see what comes of it. I did file a legal incident report to have some of our lawyers at the national level take a look at it. So they, yeah. So they'll review it.
I, for one, don't care if someone calls me a Christian nationalist because I am a Christian and I'm a nationalist.
But
so I don't even see it as a badge of dishonor or anything.
Josh, what I could do, and I really just want to encourage your viewers, that's a very common response, just so not to like single you out, but I really want to encourage your viewers not to do that. And I will send you the slides because I don't think that you would agree with.
Well,
See,
no. I'm not
how
saying
they're defining it.
No. I'm not saying like I'm an actual Christian.
he wants to redefine the term.
I want to redefine the term, like how the pride movement took the rainbow away from the Christians. I want to co-opt it. I want to co-opt it and be like, hey, you want to call me a Christian nationalist? I believe in Jesus Christ. He's my Lord and Savior. And yes, I'm America first. I'm a nationalist. I believe in my nation. I believe in my people, and I believe in my culture, and I'm not ashamed of it. So you can go on and say what you're going to say and present to these churches that are just wishing someone would show them any interest.
I'm trying to remember one from the slideshow. Would you agree with a statement that America's government should make a mandate that we all be Christians, or that we're like
Do I agree with that?
That our government should say that we are a Christian country and that should be dictated by our government?
No. No, I don't think.
And you're not a Christian nationalist the way they're defining it.
No.
I'm telling you, it's dicey and it's not good.
I'm gonna name drop. Okay, I was in a Facebook conversation last night with Luke Saint and Chris Hume.
Oh boy.
And we went at it for a while, and it was pretty bad. Like I would say their views are are like that.
I would love,
And I
I'm
don't,
just,
I'm not for that at all.
I'm gonna call them out. I would love to debate them, but they won't let me
Mhm.
step into the ring because I'm a girl. So, no, you heard it
Yeah,
here.
oh, that's right. That's why you were on the round table with us. That's the origin
right.
story of the round table. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
Debates are not a contact sport. Come on. Like, let me in the ring. Let's go.
Right. What they are doing, they're harming. If you want to talk about Christian nationalism and being
Well,
too radical, that's what's harming uh good Christians from doing good things is them.
Yes. Yeah,
we should do a
yeah.
whole
And
episode on
here, Josh,
Yeah.
I pulled up the statement just since I'm going to quote them just to get their exact quote, just to be fair to them, even though they're not fair to me. So how do researchers identify Christian nationalism? I'm reading from their handout. Americans who embrace Christian nationalism strongly agree with statements like the federal government should declare the United States a Christian nation.
I don't know a single Christian who thinks that.
There's probably like
I
what
know.
3 people in the county who believe that. But
I know.
hey,
Like,
you
I
know,
mean, if you look under some rocks, maybe you'd eventually find somebody, but dang, like you're inventing a boogeyman that just does not exist.
exactly.
Can I
say
read
that
you a
all the
little
time.
more?
Sure.
Yeah,
We're
go
here
ahead.
It's fascinating.
Okay. How does Christian nationalism show up in politics and policy? According to multiple academic studies using large nationally representative surveys, Americans who embrace Christian nationalism are more likely to approve of, I bet you Josh is going to disagree with this, sorry, approve of authoritarian tactics like demanding people show respect for national symbols and traditions. That's what
Yeah,
I just
you're
doubted. You get
authoritarian for sure.
libertarian. I doubt you're gonna be like at like gunpoint. Like you
No.
better say that pledge. Like that's not
Actually,
what you believe.
yeah, my son's going to Trail Life USA, which is Boy Scouts for Christians.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I actually used to be like all about doing the Pledge of Allegiance. And this is a hot take. I'm a registered
Yeah.
Republican,
Uh-huh.
but I felt convicted by God about the Pledge of Allegiance because I felt like I cannot pledge my allegiance to anyone but Jesus Christ.
Mm. I
And
know what
and
local
and
like
I don't even
violate
know
their religion.
I
Yeah.
don't even know where it came from. Like I was doing the Pledge of Allegiance since I was a child because I grew up during 9/11. I was 5 when 9/11 happened. It was ingrained. The
Yeah.
first like year there was a moment of silence over the intercom in kindergarten for 9/11 for an entire year, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. He did that every single day. It was just like a propaganda, like love your country no matter what, no matter how bad no matter all the bad things we've done. Anyways, I don't want to get into that. But but like I had this severe conviction from God about the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm here amongst other men, in Trail Life, and they're all wearing their shirts with their American flag on it, and they're doing their Pledge of Allegiance, and I can't do it because I'm just like I can't pledge my allegiance to anyone but my Lord and Savior. And even though my Lord and Savior is in that pledge, I can't pledge allegiance to a nation that fundamentally isn't a republic anymore. And right now, yes, right now.
Yeah. We've
It-
fallen away.
yes, we've fallen away from being a republic. So yeah, just a little excerpt there.
No,
I'm definitely
good.
not a Christian
Go for
nationalist.
it. You're definitely not. Would you guys like one or two more before we get back to Penn Manor? And I know we got
Sure. And yeah, we should probably wrap up soon. Yeah. Go ahead.
Fear and distrust of religious minorities, including Muslims, atheists, and Jewish people.
Wow.
No,
Katie
I
has
mean,
problems with Jews.
we go to the summit on the national website and watch the presentation on anti-Semitism in public schools and how we were trying to spread awareness to stop that. I'm like, I was like, this is not what we believe. This is not who we are. Like, you're getting this totally wrong.
Yeah.
And they just, let me
I
see if
still
I
can't get over someone else. Can you imagine, Josh, if I went up and gave a presentation? This is what Josh Gerber believes. And I like you. Like, I would get a lot of things wrong. But someone who doesn't like you and is presenting about you, that's just insane. And they're doing it over and over again.
On 2 slides. Yeah. And it
Wow.
was like, you might see Moms for Liberty and there. And as I was standing in line to talk to this pastor that has like 666 as his identity. And by the way, there was no cross, no signs of Jesus, no Bibles in his
What?
church.
That's suspect.
Some cheap hardwood floors and a lot of coffee. That was it. So as I'm standing in line to talk to him, I'm me, I'm pretty social, I'm pretty open, and you know, I'll talk to anyone and stuff. So there's this little old lady, she seemed nice enough. So we're waiting in line and everything. And I'm like, oh, so I'm Rachel Wilson Snyder. Like, I'm the person he's saying is a Christian nationalist. That's what I'm waiting to talk to him about. You would have thought the boogeyman jumped up and tapped her on the shoulder. I mean, she
Did she
like,
jump backwards?
she said, get away from me. And she said, you're bad. You're so bad. You're the worst of the worst. I said, can I just talk to you and tell you what I actually believe?
Wow.
But no. And she was shaking and she said, you're the worst of the worst. Get away from me.
Oh,
And I really
man.
felt that, you know, that pre-Nazi, like, get the hell out of the
Oh.
pool.
That's really scary.
You
Yeah.
know,
The
it is.
degree
It
to
is.
which she dehumanized you.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah.
it goes
Yeah.
back to, I did that when I talked about like the Milgram experiments and
Yes.
what's the other,
Yes.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
just insane. What the level
So
of
he is
programming.
teaching his congregation to fear and to hate and to not take in evidence, to take in new information, to not talk to people. Not good.
That's
Not
a cult. That's a cult. That's not even a
He's
denomination or a
traveling the
church. It's a
county
cult.
talking to other churches. So yeah,
Wow.
it's not good. I'm happy to debunk it. I'm happy to talk to lawyers about it. It's just, it's insane how bad things, I want to say are right now, but I'm going to say have been, because we're getting past this and we're turning the corner to a new page. But I don't think, so back to Penn Manor, I don't think a lot of our conservative, right, America loving, liberty loving, understand, the masses just really don't understand how bad it is and what's actually out there and what's actually happening. And
Wow.
how strong the opposition was to the Independence Law Center. And the biggest reason they gave, I listened to all their speeches, you know, was because what they believed to be the Independence Law Center's faith. And I'm like, well, how do they identify? And if you go to their website, I mean, you can be Christian and work and be hired, have contracts, have a right to say. And the far left is saying, and there was a whole lot of them, this wasn't 5% of the population, was freaking out, sometimes to the point of hysteria, some very bad behavior happening in the auditorium, including an old-fashioned shunning. And they really believe that this law firm should be denied work, denied contract, denied a say, because they believe that firm is Christian. That firm doesn't even say that on their website. I'm sure many of them are, but they say they are a First Amendment law firm. And so they're like, well, if you're not, you know, this and that, then why are all your clients churches? Well, because we defend freedom of religion. So you're going to get a lot of churches, you know?
Well, what they're doing is exactly like what you were saying, is what the Nazis did to the Jews.
Yeah.
Well, like, oh, you're a Jew, you can't work here.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, like you're a Jew, oh, you can't come into the store and be my customer. Like, it's completely dehumanizing, like you were saying.
Yep.
100%.
That's absolutely
So
insane.
I was there, a few of the moms were there. This was the first meeting in the large group room. And then there was some parents there that were against it, but we were definitely not organized and, you know, more smaller. And the parents, you know, started catching wind of this. So we started sharing about it. And we love to just be a bridge and help connect people and to help empower people. And so from there was like 2 different groups of parents, and I call it the power of the parent in the basement. Host a meeting, have us come in, you know, bring in your friends. We are happy to like educate you. Like, here's what's going on. Here's the issue. And we put together, you know, talking points, you know, in conjunction with, you know, we're very collaborative, like what's the parents want to add to this and stuff. And helped organize speeches, you know, and there was 2 more meetings. And the votes actually went back and forth, you know, even the first vote, which was to get it on the agenda, was a no vote. And we had to kind of come back in as parents, as citizens, with some pushback and say there was many talking points, but the biggest one was not hiring someone just because of their personal faith-based beliefs or what you think they believe it's un-American. And if they can't work because they're Christian, then you can't work because you're Christian, and we got a huge, huge problem. And that's wrong, and we're not going to do that. And there was a school board member, I apologize, I'm forgetting his name at the moment. He did a fantastic job of presenting like the actual policy that the ILC wrote that was implemented elsewhere. And there was none of this, I guess we'll go with Christian nationalists. There was none of that kind of stuff in there. It was a very objective policy. It was a very First Amendment based policy. There was no hate in that. And so it really just, a lot of it comes down to this hysteria where we really just need to be thinking critically, looking at the evidence. How are you defining this? What does this mean? Do you agree? How do you identify? What are you saying you want? Not what I think you're going to do. What are you going to do? Not what I am afraid of. Like not just giving in to my, fear, and then hating people because of lies and accusations, rumors, so a lot of that became readily apparent. And I think, Penn Manor being a more rural, more conservative school district, people would be surprised of the numbers that turned out, the wrong information that was out there. We thankfully, parents in Penn Manor did become awakened to what was happening and cared and started speaking. And we are more than happy to do that in any district. We've done that in other districts, but we'll just sit with people, meet with them, share information, help them organize speeches, teach them how to speak at a school board meeting, what the rules are, where to find a policy for how to speak at a school board meeting, all that kind of stuff, and just really help them to feel empowered so that they can speak up. And long story short, they did. We won. ILC got hired. Now there are several policies that the ILC contracted on the topics that we spoke about earlier that are real and tangible and happening now in Penn Manor.
That's great.
Awesome.
That's amazing. You said something really cool about how the left can organize better than the conservatives.
I feel like that's fair.
Yeah. So
I'll give credit.
When you were saying that, it just made me think about like conservatives organize, in in churches, like an organization, is a church, a group of people. We can organize that way. But looking at the left, that's their religion. Their religion is being Marxist. That's why they have passion to do this revolution, do this cultural revolution, because that's their religion. For us, for you and me, our religion is, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and then like our kids going to school, us working, that's just our lives. For them, that's their religion. They'll die for that, you know. And I guess we're gonna have to become more willing to step up and die for our culture because they want to change our culture because their religion says so. We have to become willing to fight for our culture. Amen. Like they are, but be even harder than them.
But don't get someone might take your words out of context, like you're willing to fight, No,
what is the cost of freedom as defined by the founding fathers?
Exactly.
How did the Declaration of Independence end? The cost of freedom is your reputation, which is your sacred honor, your lives, and your fortunes. So are you willing to, like the number of times I've heard, I'm not willing to take these arrows and be called these names that aren't true. Well, you're putting your reputation above freedom, and the cost of freedom is your sacred honor, your fortune, and your lives. That is what freedom costs. That is what they pledged. And every generation gets taken to task on this. Everyone. And you use it or you will lose it. All those inalienable rights, use them or lose them.
Freedom comes with risks. Exactly. I see your point. Exactly. You got to put yourself out there.
And if the other side is more radical than you because that's their religion, then we've got to meet them where they're at.
Giving them credit, and I respect that. They care passionately about their cause and they're willing to put money into it. They're willing to risk their reputations. that is probably some positive things I can say about them and respect them for. Some things that are not okay. Obviously, the lying, maligning, gossiping, slandering, that kind of crap that we talked about.
Dehumanizing.
Obviously against principles, like they're maybe want to overthrow the Constitution, and I would like to keep it in the Bill of Rights, those things. So we disagree on a few things. But at Penn Manor, and a lot of this was teachers doing this. There was this person who spoke who was very patriotic and shared some of his Christian beliefs. And everyone may or may not agree with it, but it's his right to say that. And I believe it was things like, saying that, homosexuality is okay, isn't loving them as a Christian. You have to tell them the truth, that it's a sin. It was those kind of things that he was saying. They stood up and turned their backs to him while he was speaking. Old-fashioned Lancaster County shunning. Now, if a lot of these folks were teachers, so if the teachers will do that as adults, when they're empowered and alone and the leader in the classroom, I mean, are they saying, oh, well, that's his free speech and his freedom of religion, he has the right to think that, and we'll just think differently? I don't think so.
No.
They're shunning that, the very intolerant left. Yeah.
Wow. Which
And
is why
yeah.
homeschooling is the best.
I do want to wrap up soon.
Those funds, not the public schools. And if I can
Yes.
have that come to fruition, then so be it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Bring
You
us
know,
all. Oh, sorry.
When you're done, once the Board of Education is over, and school choice is established, Moms for Liberty can move on to the health side. You guys can just jump over to the health side then.
Just jump over. I think, well, like you were saying earlier, the Department of Ed being dismantled and abolished, that's wonderful. And it's just a blessing that we're all very thankful for, that that's coming very soon. But in states like Pennsylvania,
there'll be a lot of work still to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was part of Josh's point earlier. But we still have, a fairly liberal governor, or far left governor. Just different things that, in different counties might go more, woke or whatnot. So in the states that are blue states or swing states, that's where groups like ours are the most important.
Absolutely.
So,
I agree with that.
yes. And by the way, we are doing a fundraiser right now for coffee. So if anyone would like to, buy some coffee, I can send you the link. Yay!
You're ahead of me.
Support our work, those contributions go to, tabling. I can spend $100 to sponsor a table at an event and keep getting this message out. So yeah, please buy our coffee. Check out our website, check out our social media. Check us out, help us out.
Do you want to plug that real quick? Wasn't it like Liberty Beans or something?
Yeah. It's Liberty Beans, isn't it?
It is. Do you want me to just send you the link?
You can put in the link on YouTube.
I'll put the link in when we post the show.
Because it's like you do the / and then it's like Moms for Liberty Lancaster, PA, but there's like a dash in between everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great plug. Well, we definitely want to have you back soon, Rachel. I mean, we have so much to talk about.
Absolutely. You're so fun to talk to.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. You guys are a lot of fun too. I love what you're doing. I love like the, two guys in the basement kind of thing. And, we were talking about losing the pillars of society. We, really have not much left of the free press,
Right.
So I really support you guys. I really support what you're doing. I'm happy to come on and appreciate you and, the little guy for the win.
Awesome.
Yeah. And we definitely appreciate everything you guys are doing, what your organization's doing.
Absolutely.
The mothers, the fathers. You guys are fighting for, the forgotten kids in the public school system that, might not be able to leave the public school system.
Absolutely.
So what you're doing is you're standing up for the people, who don't have another option.
100%. And the reason it's key, one last comment, Dan.
Sure.
The reason it's key is that 86 to 92% of Americans come through the public school system. We cannot give this over to the neo-Marxists and indoctrinate them in Marxism and keep our country. We won't hold the line doing that. We have to reclaim this territory. Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. That is a wrap. And thanks everyone for listening. And we'll see you soon.
You bet.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.